In this video, we're going to have a look at the HSL controls in Affinity Photo, and I'll show you how you can use them to tweak and transform the colors in your photos. Now, this is my starting image here, and you can see with a few simple adjustments using the HSL command and the recolor command, we can come up with something completely different. So let's get cracking here. We'll go to this starting image here. And we can begin here in the Affinity Photo Layers panel. We need to click the adjustment icon here at the bottom, and we can choose to add an HSL adjustment layer. Now, the HSL adjustment stands for Hue, Saturation, Luminosity. And you can see we've got a hue shift slider, saturation, and luminosity shift here. Now, initially, if we drag these, you can see what's going on here. We're changing the hue of all the colors in the image. The same with the saturation. If we wanted to boost or reduce the universal saturation or the luminance, we can do that, but that's not really what this control is designed for. Notice how we have these 7 little color spots here below the color wheel, and at the moment the master spot is selected. You can see this sort of multicolored spot here, but we can zero in on different color ranges within the image by clicking on these different dots. So if we target the reds, now you can see when we adjust the hue, we're going to change the hue of the red color range in the image. You can see how that's affecting the flowers there. Similarly, if we target the greens and adjust the hue, you can see we're affecting the leaves. Now let's say I want to boost the leaves slightly. I could perhaps just shift the hue slider slightly to the left there, increase the saturation, and perhaps up the luminosity very slightly. But I can see some of the leaves and stems aren't included in that adjustment. So what I can do, if we zoom in a little closer here, I can fine tune the color range to determine what's included. And I can do that by using the color wheel here. You can see we have these 4 dots on the color wheel. Now the 2 outer dots here determine the sort of transition between what's affected and what's not affected. So they sort of control the fall off, whereas the 2 inner dots, this range here between these 2 dots, is going to be completely affected. So we can expand or contract the range here. If I want to include perhaps some more yellow tones in that range, and perhaps try and pick up some more of the leaves and the stems in the image, I can increase the range like that and fine tune my points. I could do a similar thing by stretching the range out towards the blues. And now if I adjust my hue or my saturation, I know I'm targeting a more precise color range that's really zeroing in on those leaves and stems. Another useful option we have here is the color picker. So in fact, rather than show you that on this layer, I'm going to make a new HSL layer, again by clicking the adjustment icon. And I'm doing this just because sometimes it's easier to separate your HSL adjustments so they're not all sort of taking place on one single layer. There's no problem in making another HSL adjustment, as each of these adjustment layers is just going to affect all of the layers below them in the stack. And so this time let's use the picker. We can grab the picker and click on any color. So if we want to sample the sort of purples in the rows here, we can click to target that and then adjust the hue again to get a different effect, and perhaps adjust the saturation. Now this time I don't really want to affect the sort of deeper reds here, so I could try fine-tuning the range again to exclude some of those tones. If I bring it this way a little bit more, we'll see what happens. So you can see how we can get really precise with our color ranges here. If I toggle that layer off and on, you can see how that's working. Now at the moment it's still affecting those other colors, so I don't really want that to happen. So what I can do is add a layer mask to that layer, hit B for my brush tool, and I just need to paint black, and I can paint quite loosely over the areas that I don't want to be affected by that color shift. So I'm going to paint over these deeper colors here around these larger plants to exclude those from that HSL adjustment. And similarly, if we go down here, I don't really like the way the jug is shifting color. So if I toggle that bottom layer off and on, you can see how that's affecting that. So I can highlight the lower HSL layer, again, add a layer mask, and just quickly paint with black to whiz over that area and hide the effect. I'll do the same on the table here. And if we zoom out, we'll see how we're looking. And I think we'll finish off here by changing the color of the background, and we can't really do this with an HSL adjustment, so instead I'm going to make a selection of the area. So I'm going to grab the magic wand tool from the toolbar over here. I'll make sure this second mode option here is set to add, and I'm going to set the tolerance around 5% and check contiguous and make sure the background is targeted there, and then just click to begin making a selection of the background. I just need to go in a bit closer and target all these little gaps here between the flowers. Now with that done, I'm going to go to my adjustments again and choose to add a recolor adjustment layer. And if I adjust the hue, we can change the color of that background. If we zoom out and let's deselect with Command or Control and D, you can see how I can change the color of the background by using that selection in combination with a recolor adjustment layer. And I'm happy with that. And of course, the great thing about making these adjustments on separate layers is we have the freedom to fine tune anything whenever we like. So I can see there's a bit of bleed into the table down at the bottom here. So I can just paint a layer mask to get rid of that. So there we go. That's a quick introduction to the HSL and recolor adjustments here in Affinity Photo and how we can use them to shift colors or change them completely.